C, D plan.
C and D, yes.
She just wanted to revisit some of the things in the offer.
That's updates. That's an
Responses.
update
And
tonight.
other questions,
Yes.
answering questions people may have. Okay. You tell me when we're ready, Madam Clerk? I did.
All set, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Councilwoman Joanne Ryan, and welcome to the Special Commission for Taxation and Revenue. It is Wednesday, September 27, and it is 5:04 p.m. I would like to thank the commission for coming back. Good to see everyone. I'd like to recognize Councilman Sanchez is with us this evening. And Madam Clerk, would you kindly read the rules?
So notice. Chairwoman Joanne Ryan,
Present.
Vice Chairman Michael DeVies,
President.
Councilman Pedro Espinal,
President.
Councilor Sue Endegua.
Here.
Lawrence Mancini is absent. Sharon
Aaron
Connerworth,
Mancini is with us via Zoom.
But he is
Okay, fine.
Sharon Connerworth,
present.
Jane Driver,
Present.
Tom Skoros,
That's me.
Robert Stolzman.
Present.
We have 8 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay. I just want everyone to know that I invited Larry Mancini, Chief Mancini, and Lisa Freed, Senior Assistant City Solicitor, to join us via Zoom. They had challenges being here physically, and, you know, this is, they had important content that I wanted to make sure was available. The clerks have kindly pointed out that because of open meetings rules, they are not voting members this evening. However, they certainly can contribute.
Correct.
That's suffice?
That is correct.
Thank you. Okay. All righty. So with that, Madam Clerk, would you kindly read item 1 into the record?
Item number 1, discussion related to revenue, property and exemption review, historical data with legal updates. The following has been invited. Gina Costa, Internal Auditor, Office of the Internal Auditor, Lisa Fries, Senior Assistant City Solicitor, Law Department.
Thank you very much. Before we begin our presentations, I would like to ask for, we have 2 items to enter as exhibits. The first item is a PowerPoint presentation. You have a package in front of you, everyone. There's a binder that's been prepared by the clerk's office. This document was given to you last week for your review. This is an updated presentation. It's a revenue presentation that Gina Costa will make this evening. It is going to replace what is in your packet. What is in your packet is an old presentation. This new one tonight that you're receiving and has been entered as an exhibit is the actual document. And we can basically explain that later on, but essentially we made some changes and updated the information to it. I would like to call this revenue presentation. It's a multi-page document. Is it 17 page PowerPoint presentation? I would like to call this item Exhibit C. May I have that motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman, by Commissioner Stolzman and seconded by Councilman Espinal. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. The item C is entered into the record. The next item that we need to enter into the record is FY 2024 tax rates. It's a survey that was done by our famous David Collegian from the auditor's office. And we're going to call that Exhibit D. Can I have that motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioners Sagoras and seconded by Councilman Espinal. All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. We have C and D into the record. With that, I would like to invite our auditor, Gina Costa, to make a presentation on Exhibit C.
First, I would like to just fully disclose this is information that I am assuming is accurate, but I will always defer to the tax assessor. She is the expert, so if she ever sees anything wrong, hopefully she'll come forward and let us know what very correct me on one thing, so just to go forward.
The whole package was presented to the administration, it has been reviewed by the administration. Should they see anything further, by all means, jump in. But it has been reviewed by the administration and amended.
Yes.
And great. Please
So
continue.
if you go to page 2, the focus of this is general fund revenue. And the Providence city pays for all of their expenses. There are for the city, it's taxes and the tax stabilization payments are separate, so they include that. Is state revenue and state aid and local revenues. In the graph, you'll see it broken down by dollar value and percentage of total.
When you say local revenues, examples?
I'll go to the next page. So there's more detail on the next page of the broken down. So state share taxes will include the telephone tax, room tax, we have the cannabis tax, and meals and beverage taxes. So that is all part of the state share tax. The state revenue in aid is distress city, distress aid to cities, state pilot, the reimbursement of the car tax, and school debt construction. The pilot section, private payments of 9.1 million, consists of the voluntary payments from the colleges, Providence Place Mall, Providence Housing, and Providence. So those are all voluntary payments to the city. As we break it down, we see the licensing and permits. That is the 2 departments, license bureau, inspections and standards, basically, the permitting for the city. Fines and forfeitures, speed cameras, the red light cameras, we can report revenue. Other revenue sources consist of ARPA and transfers from other accounts.
I'm sorry, may I ask just a question?
Commissioner Schultz?
I appreciate the information, just I went a little quickly for me to absorb. The pilot payment line, is that the state pilot payment or local pilot?
Well, that is the local voluntary payments.
Okay. And the state aid, is that, where is the state pilot?
State pilot is under the state revenue and aid.
State aid, that's part of the 106.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask Gina, Ms. Costa, that you provide the commission with detail for each of these points? I think it's kind of, it gets to your question. I think it's important to know which each of these buckets are made of.
We do have some, just in.
No, it's okay.
Going on to the next page. So this is the total assessed value of city property, $27.5 billion. $9 billion of that is tax exempt. And the remaining $18.4 million is how the city draws their taxes.
You're on page 6 now, I'm sorry.
Maybe
four.
that-
Looks like that's-
Yeah.
That's property assessed value.
No, okay, I'm sorry. Assessed value is on page 6. We're in the book?
The new presentation.
Wait, wait, no, they're correct. Oh, you're in the book one.
You're in the,
I think you're in it. Do you have the presentation?
The presentation.
That was put on.
Hold on,
I got one.
please.
here's a new one.
I know.
Hold on,
I think I need one too.
You have the new one? I don't know.
hold on. The clerks presented a document. It's a new document. It's important that everyone has this because the one in your book is different. It's the same, it looks the same, but the one that was in your binder, I gave you last week. This one tonight that was handed out is the one we should be paying attention to, focusing on. The one in your book you can throw out. Okay? And the presentation that, Ms. Costa is making today is on the one that we received today that is defined as Exhibit C. Does that help? So don't look in your books, look at the presentation. You'll get your book squared away later. All right? Page 4, total assessed value. So tax exempt, the value of all the tax exempt, 33% of the city's tax exempt property is valued at that number. And the same thing for taxable.
18.4 billion is taxable. There are other taxes, personal tax exemptions that come off people's property taxes. But that is going to be discussed at another time. That's the elderly, the vets.
We'll have a separate presentation.
I just want to note that that is there, but it's not in this. So on page 5 is just the list of types of properties that are exempt in the city and each of the values. I'm just trying to inundate you all with information, that's all I'm trying to do.
This is great.
Okay?
Bring it on.
What is charitable? 71. David, off the top of your head. Usually like, nonprofit, Girl Scouts or something, yeah. Any charitable, any other charity that's not listed in one of these, basically. Yeah, Jenny said yes.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you, David.
So here is the tax revenue for the city. This is broken down into 3 categories: real estate, tangible, motor vehicle.
I want to go back to tax exempt properties if you don't mind. So, sanitary town is exempt by charter, federal hospital, library, municipal, school, what school in that category?
Any school, college, university, K through 12. Area.
So this is just a catalog, okay, gotcha, thank you. All right, Councilwoman, Commissioner, I'm sorry, I gotta admit, they both begin with the same. Commissioner Wells, Connie Wells.
In terms of school, is it Providence owned schools or was that include other as well?
Every single school, whether it's city-owned, privately owned, any school, anything that is categorized in the tax as school. All property, Moses Brown, classical high school, any school, and yes, so for any college and universities.
Commissioner Sigoris.
Vote of city. Thank you. What are examples of that?
I'm gonna defer to Denise. I actually do have a list of them, but I don't have them here, so if she can.
Denise, do you have it off the top of your head, do you want to?
I don't have examples off the top of my head, but generally they would be properties that had council resolutions granting tax exempt status.
Okay.
Let's get a list of those. Thank you.
So if I know it counts.
Are we ready to go on to the tax
Yes, please do.
revenues? Yeah, okay. So,
Sorry, we keep interrupting you.
no, that's quite all right. Tax revenue is broken down into 3 categories: real estate, tangible, motor vehicle. We all know the motor vehicle has been phased out. This 650,000 represents old taxes due from previous years prior to the phase out. Okay, so we are still trying to collect it.
When does that go off completely?
Last year. What is not included again, I will keep repeating this, are tax stabilizations. Okay, the total revenue of tax stabilizations is 18.6 million, and it includes both real estate and tangible. Okay. Okay. So all of those taxes, this is a breakdown of the levy codes. And each of the ones that are taxable include 8 law, CO1 is commercial, over to the right residential, and then the TSAs. Those exempt ones will mirror from the previous slide, and PRA is its own.
What is PRN?
Property development, is a city owned, so they do not pay tax.
They take, could you explain, can anybody explain what they do for the commission?
Properties of PRA.
The PRA take property in and manage them. They come off the tax roll.
They become tax exempt, and then they try to turn them back into the tax roll. That's the tax roll.
And the whole there's a commission, a committee, agency that manages them. There's a director, they're oversighted by, they work with the planning department. And typically properties that are appealing, or have value for development, will go in there, and work with the planning department to try to develop them and put them back into good use.
To page,
Do we have the value of all those? Because we have counts, but I just would like to know the values.
you do have the value of the exemptions, that's the 9 billion in the previous slide.
Okay.
But I can easily add values in that
Yeah.
slide.
Let's look at that.
Does that include vacant schools, or would that, a vacant school be in the schools?
I would defer to the assessor on that.
The PRA it would only be properties that the PRA has taken, control of. I don't know what property had coming from the vacant schools or not, but not necessarily.
Janice, why don't you step up to the table? You're answering questions. And David, I'd like you up there too. You're answering questions as well. We didn't swear you folks in, but you're employed by the city. I'm not doing that.
I swear to tell the truth. So there's a list of those properties?
There is a list of those properties. Which properties, off the top of my head, I can't specifically think of. The best place to actually get that information would really be through the PRA, because unfortunately, not always our coding in the assessor's office reflective of a PRA held property. Sometimes there's just a lapse of communication, so we try to flag them all for our purposes, but I would definitely defer to the director of PRA to get an updated list if you wanted specifics of those properties.
So do they stay in that sort of limbo for a certain amount of years, or is it like, depending on the property? I'm just curious, like how long those sort of sit fallow.
Again, I would defer to the director of PRA. I don't have a
Commissioner
specific.
Driver, we can get some more information
Yeah.
on that. I think, it's unfair to put you on the spot.
Oh,
to
yeah,
answer
no,
all those
no.
questions, but we would like to get a list of, and see what the value is and see what they are. There's 24 properties in it, and I was looking here, I don't know what that means.
I can definitely provide those 24 that I know of that are coded, but
Okay.
for accuracy, I would just defer to the PRA.
Let's, I
I
got
didn't
that
mean
on
to put
my
you on the
list.
spot.
No, it's fine.
Commissioner Driver, I have that on my list of things we'll get for the next meeting, okay?
Mhm.
All right. Continue, and then slide 8.
So the real estate taxes are broken down to residential, commercial, and law. And in that revenue line item, there are also back taxes, like the back taxes and motor vehicles, there are back taxes on the real estate taxes. And that's 4.5 million that they estimated that they could collect for fiscal year 24. And it's also good to know that the city uses a collection rate. They never assume they're gonna get 100% of the taxes that already have back taxes. So they use a collection rate in fiscal 24 of 94%.
Commissioner, Vice Chair.
You explain before what is it?
E4 is for low income housing.
That's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to find.
From the further, they only have to pay 8% of the previous year's income from the rent or lease. So they are done by Julie separately, right? She does those all individually, so I never question the 8 or that. When we go into slide 9. this-
I'm sorry, but it was just, because the,
Commissioner Stokes.
if I may ask, so on slide 3, we see tax revenue of 371, 346, 64%. And here we see total taxes of 296. Is that because this revenue source has, on page 3 or slide 3, includes revenues that are other than real estate taxes? Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm following, because there's like a 25% difference, so there's other,
Tangible is not included in slide.
got it. Oh, okay, great. I'm sorry for slowing us down. Just want to make sure I was following your slides, okay.
So when you go, I was looking back at what you missed to the parcel, so I went back to the parcel to show you the taxable properties, should have put that earlier.
Okay.
And these are, here are your values by tax code. You go at 18.4. This is all of the revenue that's generated to that, 296 million. Generated from this 18.4.
Great, okay, and they align, so slides 4 number, the pie chart is are exact. Okay, great, thank you.
Slide 10 is just showing the tangible portion, and again, they have the same issue with the taxes to tangible. And there's a little tiny slice in there of motor vehicle, which is just back taxes. I am to show you what is budgeted in the city, that's basically what this all is. Hopefully, 100%, but, you know, about 94. Any questions? And so page 11 is just showing you the fiscal year 24 tax levy and the year-over-year variance, and the same thing with the tax rates.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Sivers?
When the homestead exemption went down in fiscal 2024, that was by a vote? Was that a vote of the city council or something?
Yes, from 45 to 46%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's done by the deliberations.
So the mayor presents the council with its proposed budget,
Right.
and the council vets the departments, and they can offer suggested changes, and they would vote on their final budget.
Okay.
So yes, it would have to be approved by the council and then signed by them.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Commissioner Stiltner.
if I may just make one quick observation from this table. I've been a resident for 37 years. I've never realized this. On slide 9, we have single family homes comprise 14,702 properties of nearly $6 billion of assessments. And then commercial properties, over $100,000 in value, 1,380 in total, less than $2 billion of value. It's a striking, of all the numbers we've seen so far, it's just a striking imbalance of a burden on, reliance and burden upon residential properties, and not a big enough base of commercial properties. So
That's a very good
I
observation.
just make that.
Thank you.
So I did misspeak because I do have the homestead exemption, it does have the properties. I didn't get the value of the homestead exemption. And I will, Chief Nancy did point out that I did not include, mixed use properties. I did not include that because they're coded as, commercial properties in the tax roll, and I only look at, residential. So in order to do that, I have to really if they would really have to mix in pivot tables and it gets really complicated. There are 774 of them, 89 qualify for homestead exemption. If there is a policy question around homestead, we will include those 89 properties separately and bring it into a total number. Just to be clear, I did not overlook it. I just didn't include it to make it easier on the pivot tables. Okay, it's less than 1% of the value of the number, so.
Vice Chair, yes?
So the homestead apply, this is new for me, and I consider it, that's where homestead extends to vacant land, so it's owner occupied vacant land.
No, there is zero. There are
It says zero.
3,173 vacant land properties, but zero have homestead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the number of properties with homestead is always.
You mentioned that there are properties with commercial value that actually homestead applies.
A mixed use property, if it's like a storefront and there's 2 family top and I live on the 3rd floor, I can get homestead exemption for.
The commercial space as well.
Not the commercial space, I will defer again to, and this is why I didn't include them, because they're very complex and I don't know the ratios, so that's the assessor's expertise.
The ratios would vary based on the property. We apportion the residential value and the commercial value separately so that we can apply the homestead to just the residential piece of the property.
Which may be multiple units.
Yes,
No
only
more
up to,
than five.
thank you. Yes,
Sorry.
no more than 5 residential units.
Just 1 second. Are you okay?
Yes.
Sure. Thank you. So just to be clear, you do a calculation on those units, mixed use, and you, from 1 to 5, if there's residential units, they get taxed at the residential rate.
Correct.
Anything over 5 units, even if it's residential, would get taxed at a commercial rate.
Correct.
So 5 is the break point.
That's correct.
I've always questioned.
Yes.
Just going on the record. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the question. Commissioner Sabari.
I have a similar question, I guess, just about ones that are all rentals. So if I live in a 5-unit house, if I live in a 5-unit house that I own, and is the homestead exemption on the value of my apartment or the whole thing?
The entire property, all residential.
Okay, it's, yeah, all residential, not a mixed use.
You'll notice the auditor broke that out 2 to 5 families, which
Yeah.
is all just residential properties up to multifamily.
There's an issue that I'm reaching for in there somewhere.
You
which
keep
is-
reaching.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, I'm feeling.
You're
the-
developing.
I'm feeling the encouragement, so I
Yeah.
just, but it seems to me that the homestead exemption, I mean, there isn't a provision to make sure that the homestead exemption is in a sense shared with the tenants. You know, do you see what I'm saying?
I'll pay more taxes,
Yeah.
you could just keep that.
Yeah.
Rate yourself and not have.
Hold on. Please.
Right, so what I'm, if I have a multi-unit house, presumably the apartments in that multi-unit house are rented at market rates. If I have, imagine two of these houses next door to each other, the rents are probably similar to each other. If the landlord lives in this one, then the taxes that landlord pays are lower. But I imagine that there's no provision to say that the rents in that apartment should be lower.
Okay, thank you. Let's leave that on the table for discussion. Vice Chair for
I
the
mean, this is a big, I don't necessarily think about the way you were thinking about it, Tom, but this is you'll see some communities have differing homestead rates for different sizes. If I live in a single family home, like I do, and I get the homestead exemption, I have that applied to my value of my home. If I have 4 more units, I got a much bigger benefit. I mean, I'm getting that value not only living in the unit that I'm living in, but I get to apply that 43% to reduce taxes in the value of all those other. It's a regardless of how the rents, it's a fairly large benefit.
Right.
So you asked Commissioner Sabari about who approved or how that homestead got approved. But I think it begs the question of how it was developed. And the reality is, our taxing authority, from, the General Assembly gives us certain, rules.
Right.
We can have a homestead, we can have various tax rates. So the year or when we had a budget season where property valuations swung really high, we brought back the homestead, the council brought back the homestead exemption, working with the auditor and the administration to try to modulate the increases in taxes. Now, obviously, you've pointed it out, there's some areas that are difficult, that aren't resolved, and perhaps this commission can come up with a way of resolving it. But the homestead exemption was used primarily as a tool to drive down those tax
Right.
bills, and it's not perfect.
No, I understand. I think that, Ed and I are actually, thinking about this, the similar issue maybe from a different perspective. But it's the same point that we're making, that the value of the exemption is high if what you have is if what you live in is a multi-unit
Yes,
apartment.
yes.
Okay.
So,
But I think it's a point to come back to when we do start talking about what changes one might
I
suggest.
think it's an important point, and it's troubling, it's one that's troubled me. And we gotta figure if we can look at trying to come up with some solutions. One of the things we wanna do is look at other municipalities, what they're doing. We're not the only municipality that's had this issue, so I actually have asked the policy office, to start to look, I spoke with, the vice chair earlier today on this very topic. So we're going to be looking at, with the policy office, as well as support from Gina, we're going to be looking at, what other municipalities are doing on this topic on homestead. We're going to be looking at what other municipalities are doing for sources of revenue, that will help add, new revenue streams, creative revenue streams that we haven't thought about. Because as this presentation is showing, our revenues, our structure is not all that, well balanced. So, and there's issues with using the homestead, as you articulately expressed. So I'm hoping that this commission, giving a good foundation, and I think we're still in our foundation presentations here, can get a good understanding of how we come up with our taxing, the questions and the struggles that we have each year. Commissioner Stoltzman aptly pointed out that there's the big difference between the residential properties and the number of commercials. We need more commercial property. We need to encourage development. I got whacked on the side of the head and the back of the head on my support for the Fame Tower. We were just looking for revenues. We need revenue streams. We need commercial construction, commercial building, and we need to encourage good, sound, commercial revenue. So those are the things we need to be looking at to truly help our base. Anyway,
Chairman, to that, can I ask a question?
Councilwoman Anwar.
On slide 9, and I'm not sure if this is a question for you, Madam Auditor, or the secretary, the commercial line that, the folks pointed out earlier, 1.9 billion, is that including, how are we valuing vacant commercial properties? So commercial properties that are commercial, that are sitting empty, or like Commissioner Gresham about last time, are they being valued at what is the?
They would be valued at the fair market value. So if they're empty and dilapidated, we may have adjustments to bring the value down based off of the current rates, price per square foot. So there's no way for me to break those out for you in these numbers here. But I do want to point out that commercial does not just include the number 6. You need to include 4, 5, 6, 7, 24, 10 and 14. That all is actually group
Yeah.
as commercial and would all be taxed at the commercial tax rate.
Which one?
So 10,
So the classes, she's
The
talking about
classes.
the far left, there's
No, I
a
understand.
number of class codes.
so you need to look at 10, 14, 24, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Is there any rhyme or reason how these things were put together or listed here?
The state actually dictates to us how we have to classify them, and this is their classification schedule.
You're talking about our presentation?
I'm talking
This
about-
way to get the table, pulls it, falsified in one first. We needed to
Oh,
put the
I'm
zero
sorry.
in first. We didn't do it, it's just going.
Okay.
It just pulls it.
I was wondering-
Yeah.
I was wondering if there was a rhyme or reason.
It's
Excel.
That's okay, let's not blame Excel, it's our friend.
Yes,
I pivoted the best of it.
yes, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Edgewater, did you get your question?
Yeah, and I think that like helps clarify that there are more commercial properties that we could be developing that would be valuable more if we're actually. It's, we need to build up that line.
There you go, which gets to my other question. The PRA, how much of the PRA land is vacant properties and who's managing all the vacant properties? Because this is the second time vacant properties has come up in this conversation. So there's 23 properties in the PRA that are vacant, correct? That's what's on the list, you mentioned 20.
Yes.
Okay, so we want to do a little more work on what those properties are, and where they are. Commissioner Segura.
One more. This is actually back to the questions about single family and the homestead exemption. For the properties that do not have homestead exemption, what do we know about the owners of those properties? Is there a way to learn something about the classes of owners? Like how many of them are people who live across the street and how many of them are Blackstone investments?
I don't know how I quantify that for you. I could tell you
They don't
that.
have a database.
Yeah, I don't have a database to do that, but I can tell you that as you go through, I have homesteads broken down by actual unit type, so single, two families, three families. As you go through the classes of unit types, the amount of home residency decreases. So single family homes, I think
Sure,
we
that
might,
makes- yeah, that
we're
makes
we're
sense.
like probably at, excuse me, we're at like 96% of home ownership being resident occupied. And then two families might go, I'm going off the top of my head, I don't have those stats in front of me, but I've done those stats numerous times.
Yeah,
Two families might go down to like 88%, and then three families will like go down to like 40%, and then four families are like down to like 20%, and then like a 5 unit, I think I may have one. If I remember correctly, last time I did this, I think I may have one. So it really does rapidly decline as the number of units increases.
what kind of information do we actually know about owners?
I don't have any.
We have a lot of information on you.
I'm sure.
I don't have any information. I don't have any information.
You
on-
just have like a name and an address that you send the.
Yeah, and likely if they're a resident of the property, their mailing address should be at the location of the property. So, yeah, yes. We try to maintain that, and we do audits to check that if that address changes, they send us a mailing address change and they're receiving a homestead exemption, we immediately reach out to them and ask them to recertify their homestead, because why are you changing your mailing address? So,
So where is that kept? You don't have a database on,
what is,
how do you? People pay their taxes. We have name.
Yeah.
We don't have age unless they tell us what their birthday is. I mean, we don't keep any of that in one place.
no, we
We
don't
don't
keep their
have any-
we don't keep their birthdays. We only keep, when they file their homestead exemption application, the only thing we keep is the application and a copy of their ID.
So when someone comes forth with an application for a homestead, on it, we have, what do we have? We have, what information's on there?
We don't ask them for their date of birth, but obviously their date of birth is gonna be on their license or their ID, but we don't
But
cross.
it's a piece of paper that goes in the file, we don't automate it. So
No,
it's-
no, we have, all our homesteads have been automated. We
Okay.
require them to be done online now.
Commissioner Severus, you?
Carry on, I'm
No,
sorry.
you want to jump in, go right ahead.
What I was specifically asking about was the ones that don't have the homestead exemption. And I think what you're saying is that basically you have a contact
Mhm.
for them, but nothing more than that.
Yeah, and not even a phone number. We'll just have their owners, the name and where their mail goes. We
And
make
if it's a corporation,
Mhm.
I mean, that name would be there, it would just be
Yeah.
the name of the agent or something.
However, they have that property title in the, if it's in the name of a corporation, then that's the name on record.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, very good. Anyone else on this topic? I think that you asked something,
I think we got it.
you sure?
I just, if I could just point out,
Commissioner Driver,
from a real estate agent point of view, there are a lot of instances where I will go to on a listing appointment or some sort of visit to a property, and there are people getting the homestead that do not live in that property. They either have, there's a whole scam going on. Just at a condominium, and one of the owners was like, this guy upstairs is charging $2,600 a month. He lives in New York or something. He had his license plates mailed to the property so that he still has a car or something. So it's annoying to the public that's out there. And the rents that they're charging are quite, so it's something that could be looked into. I don't think it's gonna be a ton of money, but it's just annoying to the general public when scams are happening, and it's not fair. So anyway,
it's a valid point. I can tell you as a council person, one of the first things I do when I've got a house that is breaking sound rules and partying and typically occupied by students. One of the first things I did was call inspections and standards, but also I called to see if the owner was getting a tax exemption, for owner occupancy. And 9 times out of 10, they were getting their own occupied. Great.
Yeah.
So it happens, Jane, and I've seen it as a council person. So, I don't know what we're doing proactively to get our arms around that, but I don't know how much, but it's out there.
I'll tell you that I've had a problem with the qualifications that the city has given us to use.
And
I
that
don't
is by
think,
ordinance, right?
I don't know. The only thing the ordinance, I believe, says right now is a license, and it used to be motor vehicle registration, but that's since now that motor vehicles were being phased out, we haven't been requiring that. But I personally believe it should be a license, and it should be some form of government document, whether it's your bank statement, your paycheck, income tax return. And I'm not saying we need their financial information, but the sheer factor to see that you have some type of document that is rather important, mailed to that location, would give that one extra security that you do in fact live there.
Could you kindly send me a memo with your suggestions, your
Sure.
understanding?
Yeah.
And a copy of the ordinance, because it is by ordinance. And we will look at that.
And the other thing is I
It's
think
one of
what
your suggestions.
I think what happens now is that because the DMV is fully automated, you could go online, you could change your address for your license. We accept the confirmation email that you receive from the DMV that says, as of this date, you.
Okay, we don't want to give everybody who might be listening.
Yeah, I
the
know.
Roadmap to how
You're
to
right.
claim this, so let's.
I'll
let's
stop.
send me a memo.
I'll
Send
send
me
you
a
that.
memo, we'll look at that. Thank you. Councilman Espinola.
Thank you. I also thought that homeowners insurance was one of the requirements.
We're gonna look at that.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Homeowners insurance, isn't that one of the requirements?
No, that is not a requirement.
I thought it was license, homeowners insurance and vehicle registration.
No,
It's a
homeowners
utility
insurance
bill.
has never been there.
Those are the three things that I
Well, yeah, we do have, I have to say that we do have discretion in the assessor's office. If we feel that something isn't adding up, we do have the discretion to ask you for additional documents. So if maybe you couldn't provide something that we asked you to bring some other form in, I don't
I think
know.
I might have just brought it because it was on the list and I just brought up three anyway. Kind of suspicious.
Maybe
Okay.
there's a hot tip line.
Please
Maybe we
consider.
drop a dime.
I'll be on slide 13. The citywide value of 2015, 18, and 23. So 2015, 2018, 2021 were the last revals, but this is 2023. Should be the same. So this is just showing in the bar charts the average value by type of house. And then the lines are showing the average taxes paid by type of house. If you look at the one families, they, despite their increase in value, their taxes pretty much stayed the same. If you look to the 2, 3, 4, 5 families, they're the ones that have grown in their taxes. Even residential condos pretty much stayed the same, and vacant land also pretty much stayed the same. So
And that is the bigger number of properties, the residential.
that is also residential properties.
Okay. Commissioner, Vice Chair, please.
So, Gina, this is not inflation, that's,
No, this is, well, let me be very clear about what this includes. This includes the value of the taxes and only if they had a homestead exemption. No other exemptions, no personal exemptions are applied. This is actual based on the tax rate and the assessed value. There is no inflation or anything else included in that.
yeah, so I just wanted to pause here and, like, this is a remarkable slide to me, so single-family homes increased on average about double. Residential condos went up 80% value. And over the course of 8 years, the tax bills of these properties did not increase hardly at all.
Slide 14. And we'll see, next page, we'll see that this is just the data from that slide. And you see the different tax rates, where they broke that.
So can we give some dialogue here on these to walk us through? Total properties are about the same, from, so the first chart or the first grouping is 2015, the second is 2018, the third is 2023. Give us some dialogue if you will, to describe the difference in an overview.
One family homes increased enrollment percentages from 208 to almost 400,000. But if you, okay, two family from almost 150 to 375. Three family, more than doubled, 160 to 430. Four family, almost 200 to 490. Five family.
Wow.
If you look at the total, so this is the average for the all residential properties. The average increase from 169,000 in 2015 to 359,000 in 2023. The average taxes paid is 4,730 in 2023.
Compared to 2015, 3935.
So that was by property type, sorry.
It's okay. I understand.
And you can see up on top of those columns from 2015, 2018, 2023, you can see the rates. Owner occupied in 15 was 1925, non-owner occupied 3310. And all across you can see that.
I apologize for not being able to follow this. Where's the 39?
Commissioner Stolz.
I apologize. Again, everybody seems to follow this with me. 3935 is, where do we see that number?
Bottom.
That's the, hold on a second, hold on a second, the person who's presenting should be answering the
Oh,
question.
got it.
Page 14, we're looking at, we just asked what the value, the 3935 value was that I referenced. And what is that, Gina? It's the average.
That's the average tax paid in 2015 on residential properties.
Got it. Thank
And I
you.
was just contrasting, I mean, the
Yep,
auditor had pointed
I'm caught
out
up
the
now.
value
Yep.
increase, but the change in tax is not as great as the.
Right, That's the value. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam
Any
Chair.
other questions?
Sorry for being slow.
No, this is what we're here for. Commissioner Sedora.
I don't want to make that comment, but what we're seeing is since the averages, in the bottom row, the average went up from 39.35 to 47.30. That doesn't seem like a large increase, but it seems that what has happened is that the burden on rental properties is what has really gone through, gone up a lot. And I guess the thing that I point out is that that's always really a problem because taking that back is really hard because you want to offer relief to the tenants, but the landlord is who you have the business relationship with. So you try to lower the taxes to them, but without some kind of way to make sure a break gets passed through to the tenant. Like it's something that works fine when the taxes are on the way up, right? You can count on the landlord to pass along the decrease to the tenants, but you cannot count on the landlord to pass along the decrease to the tenants. And I think that winds up making creating sort of asymmetries over time.
Vice Chair.
I just want to point out that the rate for these properties is 1835, so if you have apartments that are more than 5 units, that rate is about double. So these rates are not that high for these properties.
If it's homestead,
So that's an effective tax rate of about 10 or 11.
Correct. And the other issue, single-family residential properties. That's their home. Multifamily properties can be investment instruments. Typically investment instruments. So, a single-family home could be a huge burden for an increase in taxes if they're on a fixed income. Or for a myriad of other reasons, but, those are things that, we need to look at. We need to look at.
I did want
Where's
to,
your driver?
I own a four-unit and a 2-unit, so I'm familiar with these types of rental. I keep my rent super low, just so you know, and I pay double taxes on my 2-family because I live in
She's
my
a
4.
fabulous commissioner too.
But I do want to point out that when the rates were really low, a lot of owners refinance, so they're not only taking advantage of a 3% interest
Good
rate,
point.
they get the homestead, and then they get the typical
They get the
rent,
rents. that the neighbors-
right, it's insane the amount of money landlords, and hopefully they're putting it back into the houses and you know what I mean? But it is kind of incredible, that owner occupied situation. It's great for owner occupants, but let's hope they're all doing the right thing,
Thank
which
you.
they aren't.
Let's hope.
No.
Councilman, thank you. Very good point. Thank you for raising that. Councilman Andwell.
Thank you. I have a quick question and then just a quick comment. The question is, do we have a sense of how many of the single families are owner occupied versus rentals? Some people rent it. Oh, you do?
On this table.
Let's let Gina respond, please.
This
Let's
is,
look it down again.
this is a table that,
Commissioner
Commissioner
Sidoti.
Mancini, I'm sorry, this is the table that Commissioner Mancini passed out last week. That was a substitute for one of these spaces.
Slide 12, less the mixed use.
Uh, Yeah, but with a couple of extra columns.
Yes, yeah, I can, Denise and I share that, I can add that, you know, I can, you have that, but I can also break it down by, let's see, number of units, homestead, non-homestead, by citywide, by ward, just let me know what that you want.
Okay. And then just a quick comment is residential vacant land has slowly gone up, but it's like a very similar number to like residential condo. Like there's a lot of residential vacant land that we could be doing something with. I don't know. It just seems like that's a fair, really high number of units for residential vacant land.
It doesn't necessarily mean they're buildable lots.
Okay.
It could just be the side lot to a single
Okay,
family.
it should be like a side. Okay.
I know my sister has one in section of school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know how many are really true.
Okay. Councilman Espinal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a quick question. What would be the average assessment on a buildable lot, vacant lot? More or less.
Did you happen to ask that?
No, it's just in the area.
No, it would depend on the area. No, I could get you that information. I should certainly provide it. I don't have it to share with you right now.
Because right now it's selling over $100,000 a piece.
Oh, yeah, land is
So
definitely,
I don't know what we're assessing that at $10,000, $20,000.
I would have to do some analysis to see what buildable lots I have that is still vacant and what we're assessed at.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sir?
Yes.
That was my request.
Thank you. Okay. Auditor Foster, please continue.
So we go to
This is a riveting presentation.
There's a lot of information. Page 15 will show from 2013 to 2023, the percentage change in value and the percentage change in taxes paid. So that is on the next page, but if you will see, Ward 2 actually has an increase in their taxes despite their 63% increase in value. If you go to Ward 11, real estate increased 179% in value, but they increased 57% in taxes. So their taxes went up, Ward 2 went down. It's all percentages,
It's a component of the
it's the tax.
property types that are in those areas, correct?
It's just average by ward.
Which is,
So this is all of the assessed value of all types, is that right, or is it just real estate?
This is just real estate.
Just real estate, when I look at it, just eyeballing them, this correlation looks just like a straight line, this does not look, this does not appear to be that differentiated, if you look at the relation of the taxes paid, it seems to be very well related to the increase in the assessed value, so the mix does not appear to be that different to me. Just eyeballing, I'm sure there's some small differences, but I guess I don't see much from this chart that shows.
Right, the percentage differences in each is, yes, I do with that. Thank you.
it's alarming when you first look at it, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The final page, I'm sorry, that's not that. It's the commercial properties. And the breakdown of the commercial properties. And so there is your total count of commercial properties, 5,174 in each of the categories. And graph on the last page will show that data comparing 15 to 23.
If I may ask a question, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Stilson.
Apartment buildings with greater than 5 units, would they be in commercial too, mostly?
No apartment building, just 505. The very first line.
Apartment, okay, got it. Thank you.
So the distinction is residential in those apartment building means there's residential units.
Yes,
So the other commercial groups are not residential at all?
no, you have the combination mixed use, but we do, that's why I highlighted that, that's that 774, where 89 of them do receive a homestead exemption.
Okay, gotcha.
And then the rest. we do not.
So the apartment building 505 is strictly residential? Over 5? Is that correct?
Yes.
Combination mixed use, 774, gotcha. I got it, okay. Anyone else? Commissioner Severis?
Only just to make the observation that again, the renters would be, would see a doubling of the.
I'm sorry, I think I heard you.
I'm sorry, this is also a case where renters would see a substantial increase in the property tax burden on their units. Because they all be in that top row, except for a few that are in the mixed use.
Well, if I may, just so we're understanding the data. So mixed use is 774 properties. So if a building has 85 apartments and a cafe on the first floor, a retail component, which the city ordinances actually now almost require or encourage some retail on the street presence. So again, use my example of 85 units and 2,000 square feet of food and beverage. Is that considered mixed use or apartments?
It would more likely be in apartments because the majority of the building is in apartments.
Great, thank you.
Vice Chair, yes?
Sorry if I'm talking too much.
No, this is
So
wonderful.
just comparing slide 17 and slide 13. What you can see is that basically the commercial properties, as their values went up, the taxes went up at about the same portion. But for residential, there's nothing even approaching that. Two categories, any taxes go up, and then these other categories, like taxes go up, but nowhere near the portion of the value. Feel like I'm processing.
It's good. Anybody else? Thoughts, questions, concerns?
It's great presentation.
Yeah, very.
Are you done?
I am done with that presentation, but again, if there's any data want, I do from the tax roll, this is basically in order that he has. She pretty much did the presentation. But you can extract the data that you want, like the picture of the homestead, that you put all that in there.
Are you done?
Okay.
Okay. Councilman.
Slightly more question than we had, but, Madam Auditor, you mentioned, a couple of these slides, the numbers are 94%. 94% collection. Is that normally about what we get? You know, is it 6% is like $18 million? Like that's not nothing.
Could you explain the collection rate?
So we do the complete tax levy, that's basically what you say, so we take 94% of that levy.
Yeah.
I believe at last week's meeting, we received the tax collections year over year. So that will be able to show you if we collect more than 94%, which I think we do because this fiscal year, and if Larry is on and he would like to comment, I believe we decreased our back tax amount. We used to be 8 million, we went down to 6 million because our collection has been very good. So Larry,
My
had-
understanding is you do a great job on collection rate, and thank you for that. But Chief Mancini, can you hear us, and are you able to speak to our collection rate, because it's been raised a couple of times? Could you explain that?
I can. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, fellow commissioners. The internal audit is accurate. Over the past half decade, the city's current tax collections, in fact, year over year, have exceeded the budgeted revenue based on that revenue, even at a 94, or in some years, less than 94% budgeted collection rate. We have surpassed that collection rate every single year, easily the last 5 years. With that, it became apparent to us, not just by budgetary information, but by actual collections, that the back tax collections were lesser and lesser each year, which demonstrates that taxpayers are wholly compliant, are not lagging behind, and ideally are paying their taxes in a timely fashion. And we're seeing less and less delinquencies. So this year, as the internal auditor pointed out, we lowered from 8 million to 6 million, our back tax collection number for budgeting. It may end up being more or less than that amount, but from a budget perspective, we lowered it to 6 million to put less strain on balancing the budget throughout the year. So
Does everybody get that? You good?
I had a quick question. about-
Thank you, Chief.
My
Commissioner Garber.
So all the buildings that are being built, the apartment buildings, there's a lot going on the west side, the jewelry district. So how are those, when do those go on the tax rolls? When people start moving in, or like what, how does that happen?
Jeanette, assessor?
My first inkling, I'm not sure what properties you're speaking of, but they're more than likely on TSA. So those will be phased in based off of the schedule that was applicable to their construction cost. If they're not on TSA, they come online immediately, and we assess as the phase of construction happens as of December 31st of any given year. Because that's
So
our assessment
immediately
date.
is when the CO is issued? When-
Immediately, as soon as a permit is issued. And obviously, work has started. So if there's framing there, we're going to assess for the framing. Obviously, the land already has an assessment. But as the construction proceeds, we'll do the foundation, the framing, and so on and so forth until it's 100% complete.
So do you guys do a little research to see how much these apartments are getting for rent? Like a 560 square foot apartment just came on West Fountain Street for, I don't know, $1,700 a month. You know, and that building's, so if they're getting a stabilization, is it, how does that work with the numbers? I'm just curious.
Well, the only time we research really rental income is when it's a 6 or more unit complex, because then we'll look at the income and expense.
That the developer shows you?
Yeah, we'll reach out to them to ask them, once it's complete, then we'll move to the income and expense approach of valuation. But they're not always compliant either, so we have to do some of our own digging and research as well.
Because I see them come up all the time, and I'm just like, I cannot believe they're getting that amount
Oh,
of
yeah,
rent for
rent
these
size.
tiny little shoe boxes.
Yeah, right, so.
I might add just so if I may, Madam Chair,
Commissioner
so
Dolson.
our conversation's a little more holistic. The construction costs are now $400, $500, $600 a square feet
Yeah, no,
for these units. They are
Yes.
expensive.
Commissioner Carnevale.
Thank you. In terms of the tax stabilizations, I've served in other capacities where there's a real question challenge to compliance with tax stabilization. I don't know if it also relates to tax collection, but I'm wondering at what point is the non-compliance benefiting or reverting to an increase in tax collection?
What level of non-compliance are you referring to? Or that they're not current on their tax stabilization payments, or in other aspects
They're not
throughout?
compliant with tax stabilization, which whatever those parameters were to get it. If they're not compliant with that, at what point do the taxes go back to a fair rate because the stabilization activities?
I'm gonna have to.
There's a
defer.
process for that.
Yeah.
Let's hold on just one second. There's a process for that, once it's determined, or once it's believed that someone is not compliant. Chief Mancini, do you want to weigh in on the process that we would use if it was determined or if it's believed that someone is violating the terms of the TSA? How does that work?
So, Madam Chair, Commissioners, there are a number of conditions that could result in a non-compliance. The next question is, can the non-compliance be cured? And can it be cured because of some other reason other than intentionality, for example, oversight or delay in implementation? I'm not aware currently of any TSA agreement that is out of compliance, but I do think that should one be out of compliance or come to our attention, it would probably be first that their payment wasn't made, would probably be the first indication of non-compliance, that the TSA payment was not paid, no different than a tax. Beyond that, the other conditions could include apprenticeship training, WMBE, implementation, et cetera, et cetera. There is a working group that has existed in city government for some time, and I do think, I know I'm joined this evening by Solicitor Freeze. She may be able to speak better to the legal implications of how the non-compliant TSA developer or owner would first be approached, probably by letter of demand, probably by letter asking that it be cured within a short window, I would think. And then if not, a proceeding would have to be held where the TSA would then have to be ruled as non-compliant. And if it is ruled non-compliant, then the taxes would revert back to what the original taxes would have been without the benefit of the tax stabilization reduction. Perhaps Solicitor Freeze could expand on that.
Solicitor Freeze, are you with us? Can you expand on Chief Mancini's explanation?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Sure. So I actually have not been approached to dive into analyze non-compliant TSAs. I've had a couple of questions come across in my decade or so with the city on what to do. And my first step is always, well, what did the terms of the TSA call for? Is there milestones? Is there some kind of construction milestones, payment milestones? What are we talking about here? So yes, I've offered some kind of a demand letter before. I've crafted demand letters saying you're in violation of certain provisions, and until and unless you come into compliance, you have so much time to come into compliance, or payments will revert to full and fair cash value if the clauses support that. But we've never made it to that point. It seems to me that either the beneficiaries go back to council to plead their case in terms of why either construction was stalled or why, the circumstances were what they were. And it seems to me that the city and the beneficiaries have always worked things out, whether it be, an amended TSA or some kind of a grace period to cure. I don't think we're talking about a very large group of delinquent, beneficiaries under these TSAs.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
No, slightly. I bring that up because when I was part of that effort several years ago, one of the very frustrating things that I experienced was companies who had the TSA, who had committed to hiring local and minority and women, and 3 years later, the employment staff did not look like the community, and there was not a lot done about it. And so there's an opportunity to either get fairness or get taxes, and that's what.
So the TSA agreements are pretty comprehensive in what they're requesting for that tax treaty, if you will. So the administration, the city, needs to make sure that there's a process in place to hold them accountable. I think, we heard about not paying your taxes, but it's more than just the tax. So we need to get better at that. And auditor, Madam Auditor,
About 2 years ago, there was a TSA compliance order in my office. She has streamlined the application with the assessor. Everything is online. They have to report. We follow up with the reporting, not just the monetary portion, but they also have to do reporting. Every time there is a non-compliance issue, she will send it to the law department for review to see if it reaches that threshold that we need to do something. Or did they cure it and is everything all set? So I think over the last 3 years, we have really improved the monitoring of that. But if you ever know of anything, please reach out to our office and we will follow up because that she is there to ensure those compliance.
I'm not nearly as involved as I was, but because I recognize it as an opportunity to increase personal love, it increases the ability to afford housing, not just the tax base, and it's a lot to consider in terms of the non-compliance that we were seeing that what the commission about several years back. So it's good to hear that something can be done, but I'd like to see keep that in our mind.
And maybe more needs to be done, but
I don't know.
I don't know. We can talk about that too. Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Scores?
Is this a moment where we can ask for a little further data? Or
Yes.
just be specific?
That was going to be my next
Oh. Sorry.
comment, so you jump right in. You're looking for additional data?
The things that I noted that, that would be, that seems to me would be useful for our deliberations. One is, perhaps it's just an idle curiosity, but if there are 26 properties that are worth $888 million that are listed under vote of city, that they're exempted because of vote of city, I mean, that's $34 million a piece. That's, it seems like we should at least know what they are. So that would be one. The other one probably isn't as easy. I would love to see something like the graphs of page 13 and 14 that are for renters. And when you have an apartment building there, you have a number of units in it. So like you have the number of units for apartment buildings, and then you have the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 family. I mean, those are obviously divided by 5 and 4 and 3 and 1. And then it seems to me that the single family ones, minus the homestead exemptions, are probably rentals of some kind. And it seems to me that you could remake this graph with rentals. Like a.
Can I clarify?
Yes, please.
So you want 1 to 5 family, non-owner occupied housing?
Yeah, although like a you know, a 5-unit one with that is owner occupied, I'd call that 4 units of rental. But to keep it simple, we could just leave those out.
No, I could do that either way. I'm trying to be very specific.
Okay.
You know, so,
If I may suggest housing works, to Madam Chair.
Commissioner?
Along those lines, a lot of this data, we could try to extrapolate by averaging rentals from reported rental incomes. And averaging it from the self-reporting of the income, rental income from the owners. Another way to do it is Rhode Island Housing and Housing Works Rhode Island produce an annual fact book with annual rental rates over the last 5 years that might get to the same data.
Actually, what I'm interested in is comparing this data to that data, not relying on that data, but seeing how, I mean, the taxes that are imposed on an apartment are very straightforwardly related to the rent that has to be charged. And you know, having data like this for rentals seems to me to be a way to motivate the changes in rentals that are reported by housing.
Right, I think we're saying the same thing, it's just the sources of data, whether we ask the city staff to prepare that data or to extract. Or
So why don't we leave it at this? Do you understand what the commissioner is looking for?
I can provide all non-owner occupied single family and all multifamily, all. If they are owner occupied, I just reduce the unit by 1.
And then, but also include the apartment building.
Yes, so if it's a 3-family, it'll only be 2 units.
Yeah, and the idea is to make a graph like this one, and a table like this one.
So if you want to see the tax rates, it's going to be inclusive of obviously.
Yeah, but like a like a per unit, a per unit change. I think,
Oh, I see. I misunderstood.
Vice Chair wants to jump in.
Yeah,
He's
'cause
got
I
to
wanna,
jump in.
yeah, 'cause I love what Tom's talking about, so here's the thing, if you assume that renters actually pay their property taxes, if you have a multifamily unit that is owner occupied, their tax bill average, say, maybe 3,000 a year. If it's not owner occupied, it's like 5. If it's in an apartment building, it's like 8,000 a year, so it would be great to see those, that's what you're thinking about.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
exactly.
Do you get that? Do you get that? You follow?
I thought he was asking for rent. I thought you were asking for rent.
Why not?
Because they're only grouped as apartment buildings, a 6-unit is grouped the same thing as a 30-unit.
But you have the number of units that are in it, right? So can't you,
But I'm not sure how you want to see that data. You just want to see
you know, like
what they're paying taxes by unit?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, very roughly, I mean, the units are all gonna be different sizes, so this is just gonna be a rough thing.
Commissioner, I think we understand where you're going.
Okay.
I think the combination of our auditor working with our assessor, perhaps, David, Mr. Pivot, they're challenging.
Madam Chair, my comment was erroneous, because I thought the commissioner's course was going toward rents, not taxes, so I apologize.
Okay,
So the apartment houses, there's 505 units.
Commercial, remember the tax, the commercial rate.
the higher rate, I mean, that would be interesting.
If you want to see, you want to assume, divide the taxes by the number of the renters.
Yeah,
Is that
like,
what, okay.
like per rental unit tax costs
I'm interested.
on these, at these different retail, fees.
Taxes per unit.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And
I will tell you, it will be a lot easier to start with the 1 to 5.
Okay.
That if you really want that 505 commercial, it might be a little bit. It's 505, I think we have to get visual.
okay, so we've got, that's a big,
Understood.
that's a job. Okay, so you've got 2 asks. Was there any other asks that anyone else would like to see? So you've got,
Wait, is there a quota?
yeah, you're out. Anybody else have any asks?
I can sell Mr. DBA tomorrow.
This is not tax related, and it just things that I've been thinking about since hearing the first conversation. I don't know if it's appropriate to bring those ideas now in terms of research or today.
Why don't you call me, we'll talk about it, and we'll figure out where we talk about those things. Whether it's here or someplace else in the council or some other department. Okay, so that's all I have for today on. Didn't I answer that? Oh, we want to talk about it. I answered it. I gave it to everybody. Do we want to have a discussion on that? Because it is getting late. So the auditor has aptly pointed out that I had an out, exhibit D, which is the tax rates. Who wants to talk about this?
I can talk about it. These accidents and determine what the tax year or fiscal year 2024 tax rates are. And then broken down residential, commercial, tangible. And if you go to page 2, he actually has what they have for a retention. Homestead, in socket is always interesting. And Central Falls. Central Falls used to have a one lump.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe they changed, they could have changed, I would have checked, but the Central Falls used to have a flat homestead. So, and then the last page is just linking it the percentile.
There you go. No. Yes, Vice Chair.
I think there are more communities with homestead.
Reverend?
on their website, some of
I'll just,
some
okay.
of the to even find those tax rates.
I know the chairman wanted the tax rate, so
This is awesome.
Yeah.
It's a really
Doesn't
important
exist.
tool, and it doesn't exist. There is no place that you can get this, you got it here. You are in the know. However, Vice Chair, are there others, that we can maybe, that you know of, that we can focus on?
So I did a report last year, and we have a section on the homesteads. I think there were 7 at that time.
Okay.
So,
Would
and I think
David
there
have
was-
access
and I
to
think
that?
there's some new ones. Yes, it's on our website. It's a little dated, but there's been some new ones.
So let's take this as gospel until David updates it, should there need to be. Commissioner Stolzen.
And Jim, one quick question for maybe the assessor. Can you briefly describe for us what properties are included in the commercial?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What properties, what types of properties? I mean, residential is pretty
Yeah.
standard, I would assume, single-family homes, for example, are residential, but what types of properties are in the commercial? Everything but something?
Yeah, so office buildings, there could be. Mostly, some mixed use may be in there. If there's a large amount of commercial space and some residential space, again, the majority rules, it could be mixed in there as well.
And how about 1 to 5, 2 to 5 families, a 2 to 5 family residence, a 2-family, 3-family, are those considered residential or commercial?
Up to 5 units is
Oh,
residential,
okay.
strictly residential.
So over 5 is commercial.
Correct.
And then the rest would sort of be self-evident, like industrial property, an office building, retail.
Industrial, I believe, the auditor broke down for you, it should be 07, we should break it down, you did industrial, so,
Or the auditor wants to add some,
the breakdown of how it's residential is all stable, so we're just following
I
stable.
I understand, I'm just trying to get a sense for what properties, make sure my understanding is correct. I mean, almost everything other than 1 to 5 family residential, most square footage other than 1 to 5 residential is commercial. That's the commercial rate.
Right.
But with some exceptions, but the vast majority. Thank you.
Commissioner Sabos.
I'd just like to mention something that,
You can ask any other items you can do.
I'm contributing, not to make. Just a question that Commissioner Henderson asked me. You'll notice that all the waterfront towns have very low taxes. And the mistake is always to think that they are more virtuous. But it's not, it's that most of those towns are owned by people who live in New York and Connecticut. And therefore do not have kids in schools and do not ever call the fire department for the 9 months that they're not actually there. You'll just see that pattern very consistently. When you're making your comparisons, take it into account.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, so next meeting, so we have a list of things we wanted. Next week, our meeting was scheduled for Monday. I have a community meeting on Monday. So, I need to move the meeting. Here's the question. Do we really have the data that we need? Oh, before we talk about the date, next meeting, I'm going to ask Chief Mancini, are you with us, Chief? I'd like you to talk about revenue opportunities. I'd like to talk about, fees, possible fees that we can generate, new opportunities for revenue, things like that. I guess I want you to frame the city budget. Does that make sense, Chief?
We can, Madam Chair. But I would ask respectfully that we be given a little more time.
Okay.
myself and my team are currently preparing for negotiations that begin next week in earnest, so I would be dedicated to that. Hopefully, if you could put this out by an additional week, that would be helpful. And I think we would
So
get,
could you be ready, could you be ready by the 11th?
we could achieve that.
The Wednesday, okay. So, I think that's an important discussion for us to have next, I really do. And I know that I've asked the policy department to generate some documents, you've got an ask, on the table. So if it's okay with everyone, I'm suggesting we don't meet next week, the week of the 2nd, October 2nd, I can't believe it's October already. That we're taking Columbus Day off, and I suggest we meet on the 11th. Does that work for everybody?
I'll assume I'll be out that week
Okay,
and return the following Monday.
are you okay to meet without you?
Absolutely. I'm gonna try to make arrangements. Maybe I'll be able to Zoom.
Okay,
I'll
well, that'd be
try- I'll try.
perfect. We would welcome that if you can. Everybody's good with that?
We had already scheduled.
Yes, we did, but I'm suggesting we're not meeting next week. Is that good? I'm giving you a
That's
break. Because you worked so hard to get it a week off. Chief Mancini, are you smiling, waving, telling me something else or what? You need
Yeah,
more time.
I just want to confirm, Madam Chair, you're looking for that information on Wednesday, October 11th?
11.
Got it.
Are you okay with that?
We're okay with that.
If you're not complete, you can work with that, but, that would be
Yeah,
our talk.
We can at least craft the beginning of a conversation that I think the commissioners would be helpful in maybe expanding some ideas, then we'll come back with more ideas.
Okay, sounds good. Because I think that is like the last foundational piece we need to really understand and be able to dig into. So let's take the time and get our list from Commissioner Segaris, and the detail from, Chief Mancini. I think that's all I have. Does anyone else have any questions? And we'll call it a wrap.
Can I just
Yes.
confirm? We want a list of the PRA properties. The vote of the city properties.
Yes.
A breakdown of the rental units by the taxes paid, that's the owner occupied one,
As best we can.
as best we can. How we will include commercial yet. We're going to update the
Tax rate?
tax rate.
Yep.
To confirm, additional homestead in other cities and towns. Did I miss something?
I've asked the policy office to do some research and provide it to us at our next meeting, hopefully we'll have that. So if you could just remind them that I have that ask and take it, I appreciate it. All right, awesome. Motion to adjourn is made by Vice Chair DeVries and seconded by Commissioner Stolzman and Councilman Espinal. All in favor, aye. Opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you so much. So folks, I told you to throw out Gina's presentation that was in your books, but make sure you keep the FY 2024 homestead property presentation that, Chief Mancini was the last page provided.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chief Mancini, I appreciate it. Thank you. I think Elizabeth Grace has left us. Yeah. Pretty thankful. And Mike Napolitano, you should have chosen to do us.